So what happens when Lucio Fulci directs a Poliziotteschi? You're hoping that it will be Lucio Fulci's take on the genre, and therefore it contains a lot of gruesome scenes of grisly splatter, torture, uh, gruesome, excessive violence. And you're probably thinking, oh, wait a minute, who am I kidding? Like, I mean, For the Apocalypse is one thing in the spaghetti western genre, but then he delivers Silver Saddle. You know what? He's chances are this is just going to be some cheap, cynical venture that he's not that interested in. Maybe there was Lenzi had Almost Human, but a lot of his other Poliziotteschi were either standard or even semi-comedic, as the genre eventually gave way to. Nah, what hope could we have for Fulci's Poliziottesco? Really, in 1980, most of them were these comedic ventures directed by Bruno Corbucci. At this point, like, let's be real, like, how good is Fulci's Poliziotteschi? It's not going to be what you hope it will be. Well, except that it is. Like, what the fuck? This is one of the most violent crime films of all time, and it's not disturbing as such because like none of the gore looks real. It's amazing like the stuff with video nasties in the 80s, like they were simulating graphic gore, but like no one would mistake these for actual deaths. It's all clearly pretend. That's kind of the fun of it, is that it's not real. You know, at some point, like, sometimes this is considered very sophisticated if it happens on stage. But if it happens on film, it's exploitative. It's like, get real, like, have a reality check, whatever. In any case, I'm going to go on a brief spiel here, and I was discussing this in, of all things, the part 7 of Doctor Who and the Silurians, because Nigel Neal had disagreements on the presentation of, say, nightmare fuel, if you consider old Doctor Who monsters to be nightmare fuel. At one time they were. Maybe they still can be for some small children, though, to be fair. He suggested that this is not good. You need to keep the impressionable minds safe and secure and innocent. Do you really want to... How long do you want to shelter people from the horrors of the world? Because I know a lot of people my age and older who are still pretty vaguely or outright resentful of being told, sunshine and lollipops and rainbows everywhere. And then when they hit high school 13, obviously the attitudes, how your teachers and your peers treat you in primary school, elementary school for you Yanks, versus high school, I guess you Yanks have middle school as well. I don't know the fucking difference. You guys are weird. There's that brutal reality check, and it's like, oh my god. But you also find that all of a sudden your parents suddenly shift, and it's like when you're like, oh hey, mom and dad, like things are kind of screwed up now. They're like, yeah, life's tough. Didn't know that. But you told me Santa Claus was real. Yeah, for our own amusement. I feel like there must be some equilibrium here. There must be some balance, some nuanced way to go about, treating the child as though they're in some bubble versus expecting them to just understand the cruelty of the world, potential cruelty of the world. I hear arguments against the implementation of progress in our societies, or I hear this all the time from... I'm not even a strict ideological vegan, just because, like, look, there are things I would like to have in my diet, such as milk and eggs, frankly, and I don't have a moral justification for it, simply that it keeps me slightly less miserable in life, which is a tough task. Like, I'm one of the few people in this world who is not miserable. And I still come across as pretty miserable to a lot of you, I'm sure. And certainly to a lot of people around me. To the people who are left, really. You see, I just don't really buy these arguments that you need to... You shelter people from things which they might not understand. You ease people into... it's like building up immunity to a disease, but you build up one's psychological scaffolding. You build up your neurology, your pathology toward knowing that the world can be quite an ugly place. Oh, let me go back to the vegetarian point. A lot of people will say like, I don't like these kind of doom or nihilistic or kind of, ceiling arguments where you say like, oh, well, people have been eating meat for hundreds of years, it's in our DNA, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, why do doctors sometimes recommend when you're getting older, hey, cut out the meat? What do you say to those people? Well, hang on, you've been eating meat for hundreds of years, millions of years. It's like, no. The doctors say that sometimes you got to cut this stuff out when you get into an old age. So clearly you can't. It is viable for us to potentially not have totally plant-based diets. And then they'll say things like, oh, but you kill insects when you get the plants, and it's just like, and plants might have consciousnesses too, and it's just like, you do realize there's a big difference between a tree and a chicken or a cow, for example, or a whale, if you want to go to an animal that people do have sympathy for. You should have sympathy for whales, but also to cows and chickens, I would argue. I understand that there is a difference between like the whale being an endangered animal and in the wild, and the cow and the chicken being in abundance. I do get why there is a distinction made between, but the priority of the whales are prioritized, for example. I get that. Before anyone starts going, yeah, I know, and I get that. Now, the thing is, with nihilistic arguments, wouldn't nihilistic arguments like that have been employed during the Industrial Revolution, when they were sending children up chimneys? Or how about during the slave economies of North America? Or during the era wherein women were subjected to just miserable existences and having no self-determination? These are all causes that no one wants to pretend they're on the regressive side of, let's say. And they're all causes that at one time seemed hopeless. So that's why I always err on the side of, let's push the ceiling upward. Let's keep going. Let's fly into space. Why? Because let's face it, we set our goals further, we'll yield more rewards. I'm not trying to get all Stalinist 5-year plan logic on you all, but it's an interesting idea. Because, and I know they say, oh, but psychologically you won't think about that because your expectations are so high, even if you make a minimal ground, you're not going to feel satisfied by it. It's like hell I won't. Like, listen, I'm a very happy guy, believe it or not. Which is to say, I wake up every morning and I'm just like, thank God I have all this, like, this magical, emperor-esque, but by world history standards, I mean, this luxury and privilege in this grand world I live in. I get to watch films, I get to go outside, and Sydney's weather's really, really pleasant, to the point of annoyance sometimes, frankly. The point is, I want everyone to experience this. And so that's why I keep the high expectations, because I feel as though that's going to gift one more energy to accelerate forward into something greater than having low expectations. Because like, oh, but you'll never be disappointed. And it's like, yeah, but you'll never get anywhere. And like, if you shoot so far, you'll get to places anyway which are impressive. And to say that you would be, that some sort of superficial psychological fragility would lead people to never truly being satisfied. I mean, I think there's too much is made of that. Like, I'm satisfied. I don't have everything I would... If I had a magic... I don't have everything that I would want, say, if I had a magic wand in front of me. You know, I have maybe half of it, though, to be honest. But, you know, I have met people who are clearly satisfied. Like, for all this talk of, like, every family secretly dysfunctional behind closed doors, like, some people like that idea because it makes them feel better about just this nihilistic wank that they engage in on a day-to-day basis. But, like, I hate to break it to you, but, like, there are some happy family units out there, and, like, not everything's a social construct. Like, you know, like you want to tell all these, like, you know, workers that, like, their families is just a joke. Like, You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes the left needs to re-examine its priorities. Anyway, film violence, Contraband, Fulci, going off topic. Because isn't that more interesting than reading out older IMDb reviews sometimes? If anyone requests, we go back to that formula for the Fulci films, retrospective, quasi-retrospective, because we're going to be discussing 1981's The Black Cat next. Now, you commenters, if you feel so inclined, you may decide, shall we just ramble on for the next Fulci video, The Black Cat 1981, or shall we read out older IMDb reviews? I'm not passionate about either one. Both require same effort on my part, more or less. I just improvise this here. This is just nonsense. It's not even coherent, probably. I'm not going to listen to this back. Actually, I probably will, just in case. I need to. Sometimes. Sometimes on this channel, we haven't mentioned anyone's names that I know in real life. Although sometimes we say things that people who know me in real life, who watch the channel, think, "Hey, you're talking about so and so," or "Why were you talking about me on your channel? What is wrong with you?" And it's just like, I was really annoyed at you. And that's, and there's literally led to like a kind of a breakup once, not gonna lie. That's not actually funny. I mean, I find it funny, but like I really ought not to. Because I was in the wrong, to be honest. Like, it happens quite frequently, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, that's Lucio Fulci's Contraband, and this is either one of the best, one of the worst videos in the history of AOD.